things first, Frankie, how are you?
I'm very good, George, but not as good as you. It is your birthday.
It is my birthday,
Happy
Frankie.
birthday.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. There's no place I'd rather be than spending it here on this podcast with you.
Hmm.
It's a pleasure. It's a delight. It's a privilege. So I'm very happy to be here.
Yeah, I'm sure that's all very true, George. And if you were a footballer, what stage of your career are you at now, do you
Oh,
reckon?
Frankie, I'm actually young. I'm in the
I
prime.
actually, all right,
I'm in the prime of life. People have written me off for years and years, and they're thinking he's over the hill. And I've dropped back into the full back position, and I'm evergreen like that Will
yes,
Young song.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I think I'm slightly older, so I'm sort of. I would say I'm kind of like I'm sort of like I've gone over to the MLS to like
Yeah,
have like
you've made
a
yeah
time of
you've
it in LA Galaxy or
you've
something.
made the move. My agent is looking into it next year.
Yeah.
I don't think I'm coming to the end of my rolling contract at Villa.
Yes.
I'm not getting promising signs that they're going to keep me on. They respect what I've done for the club, but they think perhaps it's time to bring somebody else in. And my agent is contacting Cincinnati or something to try and get me
Yeah.
playing over there. Or
And you're a very solid backup to Matty Cash as well. Very
yes,
solid.
yeah,
Step in where you needed. Bit of
yeah.
that veteran now.
No,
Dive when you
yeah,
need to.
yeah, that's it. Bringing in that sort of experience,
Yeah.
the elder statesman. He's been around the block, and people come to me for advice, and I'm happy to impart wisdom and
Yeah.
all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
That's me. I mean, I think I've always had that about me, to be honest, Frankie. I think people have
Yes,
always been
completely.
attracted to me for my wisdom and
Well,
knowledge and.
that's why I asked you to do this podcast, George. Who else could I?
There was nobody. I mean, you tried a few other people, obviously, but
I
always
tried
left you.
about I tried the entirety of the whole 10 and they all said no. So, but no, I would say I'm on my last contract in the MLS with LX Galaxy. But having said that, Wayne Rooney went to DC United about 4 years ago, and I am his age, so I'm actually probably a bit,
That's right.
bit over the hill there. So
Frank, I
yeah,
have to say, you look, considering Wayne Rooney was a professional footballer for many, many years.
oh
You
yeah,
do actually look fitter and healthier than he does,
oh
which
I'll take
is,
that.
I'd actually fancy you in the MLS. I think you could do some damage.
Yeah,
Take the
yeah,
experience, playing with the London Lions. I think take that experience over
yes,
across the pond.
yeah.
Just show him a thing or two. I've seen your goal scoring prowess on BT
Oh,
Sport.
yeah, it did make it
So
onto PT Sport.
it did
Yeah,
make it onto BT Sport. So I see what you can do. I don't
yeah,
think the MLS has seen anything like you, Frankie. I think you could really show them something special.
I think so. They would never have seen anything so talented come out of Rushall Olympic in the year 2002. Believe me, there was a lot more talent at Rushall Olympic than me in the year 2002, which is who I played for a bit. But yeah, yeah, they were. That's the golden era. The golden era.
Golden era, the gold.
Yeah,
Bring that era back, Frankie. There's still a chance. Right.
yeah,
So Frankie, you were again. You've been at the game.
I was.
You were at
Yeah,
the was it the Brentford Community Stadium?
yeah. Community Stadium.
What was that like?
Fantastic day out, really. I I'd never been sort of down to that stadium. I didn't go to the old ground either, Brentford's old stadium, so I didn't really know the area very well. Got off at Kew Garden. My goodness, George, all the pubs around there were very fancy. I was sort of walking past thinking, like, am I the most intimidating looking person who's ever walked past any of these pubs? And I'm the biggest wimp in the Western Hemisphere, so it was very smart, very nice, and I don't know, like good vibes, good, nice sort of family club. Good stadium, good new stadium, interesting new ground, and sort of in around all them new flats, and just a good time. And I really like Brentford and Brighton. I think the two of them have worked their way up the league, very smartly, producing some really good football, good teams. So more power to Brentford and the likes of Brentford and Brighton, really, and the
Yeah.
way they've established themselves in the Premier League is an example to everybody, really. Didn't just buy all their success like some other clubs have. So I had a good time there, and yeah, the Villa fans, as ever, fantastic, really loud. And what I would say is, don't try and give your opinions on a football game just after you've had a fair few pints at the game, because I may have been somewhat more optimistic about it than quite a lot of other people were. So I may have been described as delusional with how I described the game, but I think the way I perceived it was like, I thought the first 15 minutes I thought Villa looked good. And I thought the final 15 minutes, Villa looked very good. But in the middle, Brentford were largely on top. And in the second half, the first 25 minutes of the second half, they were massively on top. I think even in the second half, I was standing there with my friend Paul. I was with the game up. And I said to him, because we were at the opposite end to where Brentford were attacking the goal. And so in the second half, I was like, we haven't seen the ball down this end of the pitch like all half. And just as Villa, it was obvious Villa needed to make a change, get some substitutes on. And literally just as they were all standing there waiting to come on, Brentford got the goal, which to be honest, they deserved. They had a lot of chances. But yeah, I wasn't massively down on it. I think Brentford were the better team for almost all of the game, but ultimately it showed Villa's resilience, didn't it? That when those substitutions came on, maybe Brentford got into the mindset of defend the lead. So maybe they sat back more than they should have done. But at the same time, I think that Luca Dean made a big difference when he came on. Traore, I think the right-hand side of the pitch wasn't as into it as in the game as I hoped there would be. Then McGinn going back into centre mid. I think it all just kind of worked, really. And again, it's a sign of Unai Emery's substitutions working. And when you compare it to previous regimes where they just wouldn't make the substitution at the right time or leave it a bit late, it was, again, really good show from Unai Emery's in-game management and really good resilience from a team who just won't quit at the moment. So that's how I perceived it. Not Villa's finest day out, but again, a really good sign of being resilient at a very tough place to play. What did you make of it, George?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Brentford, we've never had a great record at Brentford.
No,
I think particularly now under Thomas Frank, they're such a well-coached side, and they've managed to because obviously they managed to stay up. They've brought in some quality over the summer and improved what they already had. And obviously, in Ivan Toney, they've got a striker who in any match against any opposition can score goals, as he obviously proved against us. And I think just tactically they sussed us out quite quickly. You're right, Frankie. We obviously started off quite positively. Emi Buendia had a really good chance in the opening few minutes to score. Good save from David Raya. And from where I was sitting, I was hopeful that was going to set the tone for the game, but in actual fact, it seemed to spur Brentford on, and from that moment on, they did actually start to dominate proceedings. I think what it highlighted in my mind was how thin our squad is. We've batted well above our average over the past few games with this incredible run of wins. But if you look at the squad, particularly the bench, we don't have a huge amount that can come on and change games. I mean, yes, Luca Dean did, and Traore in previous games has as well, but we are limited in terms of how we can change games. And it is the same team we've been putting out for the past couple of weeks now. So I think there was an element of fatigue. The fact it was at Brentford, who are, themselves still in with a chance of qualifying for Europe. They've had a fantastic season and they've got a great home record as well.
Yeah, they do.
I was kind of, ultimately a bit disappointed with the performance, but that actually goes to show really how far we've come, that me as a Villa fan can look at that and think, that was a disappointing performance. I think given how we played, the fact we came away with a point makes it a really, really good result. And to be honest, I think a lot of Villa fans should be much more positive about it. I think in hindsight now, it's a few hours since the game's finished now, obviously. I'm looking at it and thinking it was a really, really good point. Obviously it keeps us well in contention for Europe. Obviously we've seen how Spurs performed this weekend. They could potentially sink like a stone and give us the opportunity to cement ourselves in that sort of 5th, 6th spot. If we win against Fulham at Villa Park in midweek, we go 5th. So that's the carrot to kind of chase now in midweek. So given all that, I think, as I say, that a point at Brentford is a really good result. I thought, the last 15 minutes when we were going for it after the substitutions had been made, we looked like the more attacking side. We looked at the side most likely to score. Just before Luis scored, Ramsey burst through and should have scored when he
felt like
when
it was coming. I'd just been in the stadium. I thought it felt like it was coming, the Villa goal.
yeah, yeah.
Last 10 minutes, it felt like.
It was. I mean, from a Brentford perspective, I would be really, really disappointed if we were Brentford in this scenario, because they had plenty of the ball, they had a fair number of chances. I think is it Sharda, the striker, missed that opportunity when Olsen.
So basically, again, I was at the opposite end of the stadium. So when he took it round Olsen, from where I was, I thought, oh, the angle must have been too tight, whatever. Then I watched the highlights this morning. I was like, bloody hell!
Yes,
I know. He missed an open
composure,
goal.
son. I know it was a bit of a stinker, to be honest.
Hence why I was probably too over optimistic about how we played.
I think the beer goggles were well and truly on, Frankie, from where you were sitting
again.
But yeah, I mean, yeah, it's a good point. And we can look forward to the game against Fulham now. We've got some really, really tricky games coming up against the likes of Spurs. That's going to be a huge game now.
Yeah.
Man United, Brighton, final day of the season too. So we're playing all the teams around us, and if we beat them, then we'll get ourselves European football. So we've just got to stick with it now. I did love actually how McGinn, when Luis scored, and Luis ran towards you lot and started puffing out his chest and all the rest of it, how McGinn just ran over and dragged him back to the centre spot, because, it just goes to show the mentality of him and the rest of the team now, that we don't want to settle for a point at Brentford. We want to take all three in every game that we play, which is, again, a very, very welcome and refreshing change from a Villa supporter perspective.
Yeah, oh yeah, for sure. Just that kind of winning mentality that's been instilled in the club now, really. A couple of other observations I had is, I think first half, we were closest to Emi Martinez, and I thought he was, God Almighty, he's such a presence back there. Like, you really feel it when he's not there in the second half with Olsen. And believe it or not, I actually missed the first minute of the second half, so I missed that there'd been a substitution.
Right.
So I was standing there so I think I did wonder. I was like, oh, that's unusual for that player to get around Olsen or get around Martinez. And then I was like, and then he made a save, and I was like, you don't score against the best keeper in the world. And clearly the fan next to me was like, are you referring to Martinez? I was like, well, yeah. And he goes, oh, he's gone off. That's Olsen. I said, so it shows how observant I am, doesn't it? So,
what do you make of Olsen? Because he's got a fair amount of stick on social media, and it's difficult. It's difficult to be a second string keeper, because you get chucked into matches, and it's such a difficult position to be and to play, to be that second choice keeper. But what. And obviously, he's understudy to Martinez, arguably one of the best goalkeepers in the world. So it's difficult to compare the two. But how did you feel once you cottoned on that, in fact, Olsen was in goal? How did you feel?
The difference is huge. It really is. Like the first half, when Martinez came out and made a sliding tackle, coming off his line as more of a sweeper keeper, as he's been coached to do recently, he did it very well. A couple of one massive save off Ivan Toney in the first half. And just his presence, his catching, everything about him, it's just very quality. And then Olsen, I just feel for him, like you say, you don't play very often. It's difficult to get up to speed, really. And so he just looks like a keeper you can score against. If that makes sense. You feel if a striker has a 1-on-1 against Martinez, Emi might just do something to stop it going in. Whereas with Olsen, you fear he's probably going to get beat. And you don't want to be down on any Villa players, but it's been tough for him at Villa. And there is obviously a good keeper in there. He's Sweden's number one, and to be an international keeper, you've got to be really high quality. But it's just not quite worked at Villa. But so I'd imagine that might be a position that Villa look at in the summer to try and maybe raise the standard a bit.
I know what you mean when you said going back to the one-on-one opportunities. When Wissa broke three to score, obviously was the disallowed goal for he was clearly offside, but I just knew that he was going to I just
Yes.
knew he was going to score. Do you know what I
Same.
mean?
Yeah.
Even though he'd just come on the pitch, I thought he's going to beat Olsen here, and he did. But
Yeah.
luckily that was offside.
And yeah, I mean, something else I noticed as well, like Villa have been quite patient and playing it around at the back recently. But yesterday, I kind of felt like Villa went quite long ball.
Yeah.
I felt like Martinez wouldn't waste time on the ball. He'd immediately get it away. And I wondered if, and quite a lot of the time, it felt like he was targeting McGinn against Rico Henry. So whether that was something Unai Emery had identified as an area that maybe Villa could win headers, knockdowns, hold it up a bit with McGinn, because Henry's not the tallest guy in the world. But other than that, I mean, like Brentford are a big defense. Ben Mee's a big presence, isn't he? That's a Pinnock as well. So that's a tough side. Brentford are a good mix of physicality and technicality.
Yeah.
I think they're a really nice mix of that. So that just makes them a very difficult team to play against, I think.
And Burmo's very physical, and
yeah, and he was good. He was good against Moreno, who couldn't really. It felt like he got forward a bit in the first half, and won a couple of corners, but wasn't quite able to really impose himself anywhere near to the level he did against Newcastle.
Yeah, I think Brighton as well. They pressed us very high.
Brentford. It's easy to make that mistake. Brighton and Brentford.
Sorry, Brentford. They pressed us very high, and I think they put Martinez and Olsen and our defenders under a lot of pressure. So, you know, credit to them. I think a lot of the long balls we played were down to the fact that they were just squeezed out of all of the options, basically.
And maybe that was a pre-game thing they decided on. They said we're going to go longer today than usual. And I have seen teams do that in the past. I remember Pep Guardiola's team doing it for Bayern Munich against Borussia Dortmund. Yeah. Remember Dortmund, they used to have a lot of problems playing against Dortmund with that high press. And I remember a Guardiola team going long and sticking Javi Martinez up front, who's a centre midfielder, and it works. I think they beat Dortmund 3-0. So occasionally, you know, that if it's, you know, if it's not, I don't love the long ball, but occasionally maybe there are just teams that, you know, great coaches decide it's worth trying out against. But you're right as well. I think we could do with Kamara and Cash coming back, couldn't we?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, from what I've been hearing, at least Martinez should be fit and healthy for midweek, which is obviously really important. You know, he came off with a sickness bug by the sounds of things, but hopefully he'll be fighting fit for Tuesday. It's Tuesday, isn't it?
Yeah.
So, but yeah, the rest of them, I mean, you know, they the four of them, Kamara, Cash, Coutinho, and Bailey, you know, they've been out now for a couple of weeks, all of them. So, so, you know, you do wonder whether Tuesday is going to come too soon for them again, but we shall see.
George and I could be about to descend into a major brawl in this, the spicy question. And today, George, I ask you, if Villa make Europe, can't believe I'm saying that still, does the club need to break Aston Villa's record spend and go over 40 million for a player this summer?
For one player?
Yeah.
Well, I think it all depends on how the market's shaping up over the summer. To be honest, I think as you're asking me right now, no. I think what we need to do, we've got a very good squad. I think what it needs though is beefing up with just a bit of quality, a bit of extra quality, kind of around the sides, to make sure that if we do encounter kind of problems over the course of next season in terms of injuries or suspensions, that we do have alternatives in place to come in and be effective, which we don't currently have. You know, obviously, when Gerrard took over, he decided he was going to play his way, you know, one way without wingers. So we basically got rid of all our wingers, and now we're in a position where we probably need to strengthen in the wide areas over the summer. And obviously, if Ollie Watkins is injured or suspended, then we need a striker to come in who is happy to sort of play second fiddle. I guess what we don't want is a situation like the Danny Ings Watkins situation, where we sign a striker who is going to be almost in direct competition. I don't necessarily think that's the way to go. I think clearly that's not the way to go, given what we experienced. But what we need is someone who can kind of come in and do a job, or come in and operate alongside Watkins if we need to go that way, if we need to change tactics. I don't think we need to sign that many players.
Yeah,
I think it's really a case of 3 or 4 tops, again, just to top up what we have. I mean, obviously that's very much dependent on who we let go over the summer, but I don't think, I mean, given how well this team has performed under Emery, I wonder whether he now thinks that he doesn't need to do major surgery on this team. I don't think it benefits anyone really if there's too much movement in the squad. I think you want to keep players if you can, and move on players who want to move on themselves or don't figure in your plans, of course, but you don't want too much change to affect the dynamic. But as I said, it's just a case of tweaking it and improving it, and bringing in a couple of players. So no, I don't think if we blew all the budget on a star striker or an incredible winger, or I don't think that would benefit us, particularly, if we are in Europe and we need to be fighting across different fronts. I think what we need is a healthy squad, a good squad, and a squad where we can rotate players if we need to. So I don't think we need to spend that much on just one player.
Well, yet again, George, we are like the United Nations, where we agree. One day I will find a spicy question where we avowedly disagree. Maybe that's why we do a podcast together.
Yeah, exactly. The one day that you find a spicy question that we both disagree on is the day the podcast ends. So maybe don't do that.
It'll come up on YouTube, and Poochie died on the way back to his home planet. Us two floating off into the sky.
Exactly.
Simpsons reference there if you don't get it. I think the same. But there's also the young players out in the Championship at the moment who are waiting to come back, and Villa don't need another they don't need a Danny Ings style striker. And you look at Archer and you think he's done well in the Championship again with Middlesbrough, and he's playing at the top end of the Championship, and you think, well, as a backup, he's probably quite a good option, to be honest, next season. And it could, Jon Duran as well is there, like, learning, and they offer two very different dynamics. Like, Duran's more physical, Archer's probably more of a pass and move, get into position and score type striker. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with Archer this summer. I don't want to predict it because I really don't know, but if Middlesbrough went up, I'd be interested to know whether Middlesbrough might make quite a significant bid for Archer or Aaron Ramsey. And I'd be interested to know what Unai thinks of that, because we are going to have to sell players as well at some point.
Yeah, of course, absolutely.
I'd be gutted if Archer went without having really seen him at Villa in the Premier League.
I agree with you.
And same with Aaron Ramsey, really, who again has done very well in both loan spells at Norwich and Middlesbrough this season, again at the top end of the Championship. So that would suggest to you that if they're not Premier League level, they're very close. Pre-season will probably be where we see Unai Emery gets to see more of them and gets to work out where they might fit into his plans. Timmy Obenham as well. QPR have lost the plot since Michael Beale left. He has done well this season by all accounts, and the same with Jadon Philogene-Badace. And at Cardiff, who's done well, and there's Cardiff fan told me at times it looks like he's been fantastic for them. So interesting summer for a few of them. Badace, of course, in a position that you'd probably identify as where Villa need to improve, get more consistency. I wouldn't be surprised if Bailey goes and then Traore stays, and Traore just as a backup option to whoever it is that might come in that position. I just think Bailey's the only one who I think his standard hasn't really risen since Unai Emery came in. I think he's playing at the same level that he did before Emery came in. I think he's still capable of real magic and having some fantastic games, but that consistency it's just not there. Whereas I think every other player who Emery's managed since he joined, I just can't really think of anyone who hasn't improved, really?
Yeah, and also, he has been quite injury prone as well,
Yeah,
Bailey, since joining, which
yeah.
is hasn't helped. And again, we talked about, where does he kind of fit in? I think, he is now playing kind of out wide, which is his favoured position, but even then he hasn't. Yeah, as you say,
Mm,
Frank, he hasn't grabbed the opportunity that's been presented to him, particularly,
yeah,
as
not
opposed to,
regularly enough.
someone like Watkins or
Yeah,
that have really gone
exactly.
on leaps and bounds and improved dramatically. So yeah, I
Uh,
agree with you.
Yeah, I do wonder if there'll be another fullback. I think a versatile fullback would be helpful. And you kind of look at the Buendia role and think he's a much competition for him. I know Coutinho's there, but how long for this world Coutinho is
Mm.
now as well, I don't know at Villa. Again, you see the links with Gonçalves at Sporting Lisbon. So, I mean, it's just very hard to predict what Villa do in the transfer market. But I wouldn't be surprised if the signings aren't necessarily big and eye catching, and
Mhm.
are a bit more like Alex Moreno,
Yeah.
players who 13, 14 million quid. Maybe we'll go higher than that. I think we will go to possibly reach 30 million, maybe on someone like a Guendouzi. But just players who come in who do the job, feel maybe they even have something to prove,
Mm.
want to work with Unai Emery and improve under him. And Moreno is a good example of that. He's been really, really good for Villa since he came in, particularly as an attacking fullback. So yeah, I think don't need to go crazy, but yeah, I think just feel like you said, George, just fill that squad out, get that bench looking a bit stronger, I think, and one or two youth players hopefully might be a part of that as well.